Writing about events in Belfast this week, our friend Cormac Lucy said, "Import the culture, import the consequences." Was he right? That's what Sarah and I'll be talking about this week. Hello and welcome to Something Different with John McGurk and Sarah Ryan for this week ending the 12th of June 2025. In many ways, a banner week in Ireland. Obviously, everyone knows what the main story was, and we'll be getting to that. But before I introduce Sarah and before I say hello, I just want to remind all of you who are listeners to this podcast, the very many thousands of you who've listened on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify over the last couple of weeks, to like and subscribe if you may, because that helps us reach more listeners. We're very grateful to the vast number of you who have already done so, and we are delighted with the community that this podcast is building. Over 1,000 of you commented on the first 2 episodes on YouTube alone, with several hundred more on Spotify. Sarah, how are you?
Okay, John.
Well, it's been a banner week, and we're going to talk mainly, obviously, about events in Belfast. We're also going to get on to the issue with the Rotunda Hospital and the row with the consultants there, which I know you have got some strong views. I have less strong views on that, but we'll talk about it. We'll talk about Helen McEntee's birthday. Wish her happy birthday, just like Taoiseach did. And maybe at the end of the podcast, we'll get into a column by a woman called Lucy Cavendish that caught your eye in the Daily Mail this week. But first of all, I'll just kick off by kicking it right to you. Give me your reaction to the events in Belfast during the week.
Where to begin? I don't think my reaction is going to be that different from everybody's, which is horror. I mean, there's just a barbarism to this crime. There's been a few, but there's an increasing barbarism to some of these crimes that's just so terrifying and so horrible, and sadly becoming more and more common. And I think people are getting really frightened as to what exactly has gone wrong, is going wrong, continues to go wrong with Ireland. And when I can only speak for myself, but as people who listen to this podcast will know, I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. And when I think back on what Ireland was like for me to grow up in, and the relative safety I felt, or my parents felt, in me going out into Dublin city centre at 18, 19, 20. And I think 10 years from now, my oldest will be 19, my second will be 17, my daughter will be 14. Like, what is the Dublin going to be like for the next generation of people? What is the Ireland going to be like for the next generation? Like, where is this going? And again, I know I speak for a lot of people, but I just think you would be weary, you really would be weary of the immediate pivot into conversations about the far right and rioters without any, not even a brief stop by media commentators on the crime, the perpetrator, why this happened, how this happened. I saw a really interesting article about just beheadings and the symbolism of them and how they're used to sort of establish something or say something in other countries, and just nothing, no comment on that whatsoever. Just, we hope this doesn't raise, that we hope that the far right will use this now. And, you know, we really need to think about what like social media is allowing people to see. Because I saw Sinead Gibney talk about, because if they had their way, we wouldn't even know it was happening.
Well, if they had their way, first of all, we wouldn't know that there was an attempted beheading. I
No.
think that's really important to say. If the media had been left to its own devices, and the Irish people were given the news that the media wanted them to receive, we would have simply learned that there was an attempted stabbing, or that there was perhaps not an attempted, but a stabbing incident. It was the fact that the footage was circulated on social media that made it immediately apparent to everybody with eyes what had happened. And I say everybody with eyes advisedly, because of course that's the horror of this case. The victim, Stephen Ogilvie, was somebody who already had a very severe hearing impairment. And it appears, we don't want to prejudice trials or anything like that, but it certainly appears as if his eyes were deliberately targeted in this attack. He has lost one of them. He has very severe damage to the other. And we only hope and pray that he retains some vision after what was... I think the thing about this one is, you know, you don't want to draw comparisons because there are people out there who have suffered horrendous crimes. But there was something about the calculated mindlessness, if that's not a contradiction in terms of this one, where it was readily apparent that the objective was to do something truly barbaric. Now, we haven't had any indication as to motive yet. But I mean, these things can be inferred. And I come back to what I said at the introduction of this podcast about importing the culture and importing the consequences, which is Cormac Lucy's line, and an excellent one. This man came from Sudan. Sudan is presently engaged in one of the world's most brutal civil wars, where this kind of stuff is happening every day of the week. I mean, we've all heard in Ireland, because as far as people in Ireland are concerned, the only conflict in the world is what's going on in the Middle East between Israel and its enemies. But in Sudan, women are mass raped, children are slaughtered, people have their heads, limbs, other body parts hacked off, largely by people who are following an ISIS-style ideology. Now, if you import tens of thousands of people from Sudan, and the British government in its wisdom gave this chap a 5-year visa on a fast-track process, then certainly, of course, many people who are fleeing this kind of stuff from Sudan will come here and hope to never encounter it again. But it's also a statistical certainty that some people like this, it's bizarre, these situations, to say the alleged attacker. It's bizarre, but we have to follow the legal niceties. We all saw what we saw. He remains the alleged attacker. People like this alleged attacker will come here too. And and nobody is willing to put their hands up in the political class and take responsibility for that. Nobody.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Come here too? This is here. It's here. Was there not 2 gay men beheaded by somebody who met them on websites a couple of years ago? This isn't the first. It is here. It's not coming. It's here.
I think you misunderstood me. I was saying that if you're inviting, tens of thousands of people from Sudan, then some of their oppressors will get in as well. That's what I meant.
Okay, fine, but I think I'm just allergic to the sort of. This is what I think. I think that the media in Ireland have made an art form of avoiding having hard conversations about things that they've decided the public are too, unsophisticated to hear or understand. Of course, there's always going to be people who have a go at a riot and all of that, but it's no longer a situation where it's only the far right who have concerns about immigration. And anybody who says that is just simply lying. And I'm just, to go back to the point, stunned that the Tonight Show on TV3 would have, they had Ben Scanlon on the second night, fine, great. But the first night, they just had a group of people who all agreed with each other talking about how the problems with social media and how social media was inflaming this and social media was to blame. I mean, is that not the maddest thing you've ever heard? The most bewildering thing, that our elected officials, our elected representatives and the media are sitting around the night this happened talking about how that social media is the problem, and never sitting even briefly with the question of how another beheading has happened on the island of Ireland and what might be related or the cause of that.
Look, I've been trying to stay calm on this. I mean, first of all, you're giving them far too much credit. I mean, our erstwhile colleague, Ben, great guy, was indeed on the second night. In the usual kind of 4-on-1 scenario, by the way. So across tokenism. Across 2 nights, it was like, what was it? 7-1 in terms of perspectives. And I didn't see the footage, but I'm told he struggled to get a word in edgeways, which I'm not surprised by.
No, he did well, but yeah, it's like he was giving the examples that I just gave of 2 men who were beheaded before, and that this wasn't the first case, and he was being interrupted by the host with cases of murder of women by, I believe, a spouse or a former spouse on the island of Ireland, and it's obviously that's horrific, but the conversation is about beheadings.
Look, nobody does the reverse. I'm holding back. I shouldn't hold back. I'll stop holding back. The Irish media are a fucking thundering disgrace. They are institutionally corrupt. There are many good individual people working within it, and they're capable of producing some very good stories. But when the mindset of journalism, and it is in Ireland, the mindset of journalism is that their objective in covering the news is to only tell you what they think it's safe for you to hear. And when I say safe for you to hear, I mean, things that will not make you react in an angry way. When the Irish media covers one of these stories, if they get their own way, you know that you're being lied to. You know that you're being lied to because this is their behavior when they're quite openly unable to play the playbook. If they had their way, I repeat what I said a minute ago, the Irish people would have been told that there was a stabbing incident in Belfast on Monday night. They would have been told that a person sustained severe injuries. They would not have been told the nationality of the attacker. They would not have been told the nature of the attack. They would not have been told about the injuries that the gentleman sustained. They would simply have said they were severe injuries. All the important information in the story that makes it politically relevant would have been excised. The only reason that information is in the public domain is because people, acting as their own form of journalism, put it into the public domain via social media. That is the reality. We have a media that is institutionally, I mean, I keep using this quote. It is not my quote. It was originally by an American guy called Iowa Hawk, a blogger in America. And he said that the role of the media is to take important stories and cover them with a pillow until they stop fucking breathing. And that's what they do. The objective here of the media is not to report the news, but to suppress it. And then don't give me, like Shane Coleman. Don't give me Shane Coleman. Like they never do the reverse, do they? If some young lad from, let's say, a Dublin private school is involved in a serious act of criminality, let's say a sexual assault or a rape or, God forbid, a murder, the media doesn't go, well, now we can't overreact because we know that kind of like people from deprived areas and sometimes migrants commit crimes as well.
There was a boy from Coolock 2 years ago who murdered 3 people.
Exactly. Instead, then, and this is like where I kind of wish Ben had pushed back a bit. Like, they don't make excuses when they think that they can infer a lesson to everybody else. They don't say, oh, well, lots of people commit crimes. No. Then it's let's have a national conversation about the toxicity of white men. Then let's have a conversation about the role of alcohol in violence. Then, I mean, I read in the Journal this week, let's all have a national conversation because, God forbid, if somebody's team loses a World Cup final, domestic violence increases. Did you know that? Let's have a national conversation about that. But dare we have a national conversation about the role that migration policy is playing, not only in crime, because, like, of course, you're going to have crime at a low level, and to be fair, some of that is a bearable cost to bear if your policy is enacted for the right reasons.
But also,
we're not talking about crime. We're talking about ISIS terrorism.
But like, also, when people arrive, they make movies about the gangs of New York. They make movies about Irish people and the crime that was associated with poor Irish people who arrived into America in the beginning. Like, some of that is to be expected. I don't think the average person in Ireland is unrealistic about the consequences of growing the population. And I think a lot of Irish people are okay with it to a point. But I think that pretending that there's not a problem, pretending it doesn't have an impact on housing, on resources, pretending it doesn't have an impact on crime is just gaslighting to the extreme. And I think that all this stuff about the far right and all is running out of road, because I don't think it's the far right anymore. I think it's Mary and Paddy as well, and they're wisening up to the fact that they're being lied to every day.
Yeah, it's not just the Irish portrayed badly in movies, by the way. It is a broad trend. I mean, every historical movie, like if you think of Last of the Mohicans, or if you think of Braveheart, like there's always some kind of like privately educated British lad who's an officer who turns out to be a brute, and right through the arts. And of course, the Irish are drunks, the Scots are a bit unruly, the English are vicious bastards. It's all presented that way, and I'll tell you now, to my knowledge, in 200 years, no white, English, Irish, Scot, or Welsh person has hacked another human being's head off or attempted to do so on the streets. Not something that happens in our cultures. I mean, there was a period where it was used as an execution in the 1600s before that was ended. But it's just not something that happens. And what we are refusing to acknowledge in this country, I mean, you were talking earlier on, Sarah, about how things were different when you were younger. There was no female genital mutilation in Ireland in the early 1990s. And I say that, it's not even an anti-immigration argument as such, because ideally you want people who are coming here no longer to be subjected to that. But somewhere along the line, that culture got imported with people who were apparently fleeing oppression. That culture of oppression actually came with them. So now we have hundreds of cases and specialist units dealing with it in some hospitals. There are various other things. I mean, in Britain, Sharia courts were not a thing in the 1950s. Now they are. People come to your country and are allowed to bring their culture with them. The progressive idea has always been that this would be enriching, that they'd make your country a better place, that you would. James O'Brien, that prize idiot who does a show on talk radio in the UK, who always talks about, like, his answer to anyone who objects to kind of like the enrichment of their area is, do you like curry? I mean, do you eat curry? Because clearly you're benefiting from immigration. The point is, of course, positive things come, but negative things come as well. And it's an absolute failure of the state to confront these cultures and eradicate the things that are un-British, un-Irish, un-Scottish, or un-Welsh about them.
Yeah, I saw a really good article. I think it was Eilish O'Hanlon this week. Did you read this article about how she talked about RTE, I think, are running a programme about people who live in Ireland going back to trace their culture from the country that they're originally from, but yet Irish people who want to, who are possessive or proud of their culture here are somehow bad. It's just a kind of the new culture of Ireland is just hypocrisy, really.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if I would agree with her there. People are talking about, like, protect the Irish culture. The thing is, one of the reasons why the left are so dominant in Ireland and why the right in Ireland have such a difficulty compared to in other countries, no one talks about this, is that in every other country in Europe, nationalism is associated with the right because the left kind of despise their own country's history. So if you're in Belgium, for example, like the left and the centrists are kind of like, oh, well, we're ashamed, we're embarrassed because we went to the Congo and Leopold III did terrible things. The Germans, for obvious reasons, are not that keen on their own history. The French, colonialists, the British, imperialists. Whereas in Ireland, you don't have that. The left in Ireland is not associated with not liking Irish culture. In fact, they are kind of obsessive about kind of reinventing it all the time. Obsessive about reinventing. They claim it. And they've kind of redefined Irish culture as this kind of anti-colonial thing where, like, we stand in solidarity with the oppressed peoples of the world because we were oppressed through 800 years, blah, 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 blah. They're not afraid to wave the flag. Sinn Féin are a nationalist party. And Irish nationalists on the right really struggle with that because, nationalism is not a defined thing. It's not a defined thing. It doesn't have an economic policy. It doesn't have a foreign policy. It's just a sense that we love the country better than the other side. The problem is that the left here in Ireland do that just the same with this kind of perverse post-colonial theory that the right is unable to challenge. But sorry, I've gone down a tangent.
No, that's fine. I mean, whatever left, right, centre, whatever, John, the point is that we have a hugely fractured voter base, or voters, I think. And on this topic, I don't think left, right, or centre comes into it. I think that people are becoming increasingly frightened as to what is no longer deniable. A changing Ireland, an increase in certain types of crime that are extremely violent and alien to people, and a media class that just pretend that the problem is the far right and nothing to see here.
Not just a media class. I mean, I bash the media a fair bit. Micheál Martin said this week that he thought that some media coverage by some outlets had been unhelpful. I presume he was referring to the likes of GB News, because obviously that's the other thing we all like to do, the Irish governing class likes to do, which is, if in doubt, blame the Brits.
But isn't that very informative? Because Micheál's normal relationship with the media in Ireland for the last 5 to 10 years has been that they help him. And it's not actually their job to help him. It's actually supposed to be their job to challenge him and to actually take him to task on things that he does. But he finds the media, potentially GB News, if you're right, unhelpful. as if they owe it to him to help him.
I don't think he thinks about it in terms of helping him personally, but he definitely, this ideology that I've talked about, which the Irish media internalize, runs through the entire Irish state, which is that if you're in the inside, if you're in the kind of on the inner sanctum, and it's not that small, it's kind of like, the inner 20% of the population that kind of like work in the civil service, the schools, the media, politics, the people, the serious people, our betters, the people who run the country first, then it is taken that your highest duty is to wear the green jersey. And like it's such a thing. I mean, no other country has this political phrase. You don't hear them talking in Britain about putting on 3 lions when there's a political dispute. You don't hear them saying it in France. In Ireland, it's this thing: put on the green jersey. And he thinks the duty of the media is not necessarily to help him, but certainly to keep everyone else in line. That the media's job is to put out the official version of the story, and that criticism will be relatively mild and confined to the margins. That's what he thinks their job is. That's what he's paying them for at the end of it.
Yeah, and don't make a show of us in front of the neighbours by telling the truth.
Oh, that's a very big thing. Yeah. Don't embarrass us on the international stage. And of course, this actually didn't happen within Micheál Martin's sovereign territory. I'll phrase it that way. This happened in Belfast. And this was a failure of the British immigration system, because the British immigration system was the one that gave him the 5-year visa. He did obviously come through Ireland, and I suspect the government was quite happy to see him heading north and out of their way. Not that they knew he was capable of this. I'm not suggesting that, but yeah, I mean, it's the whole thing is just a disgrace.
But those riots are disgraceful, and we should definitely be doing something to clamp down on social media so that people can't get the full information and facts again.
I find the riots, to say on the riots, less people. It's very hard to know what to say, because obviously the sensible thing to say is, oh, well, the riots were bad, and we don't want to see that sort of thing, and people are angry, but it'd be better if they didn't riot. And then it comes back to like, what on earth else are people supposed to do up there to express their anger? And I ask that seriously, because voting doesn't work. In Northern Ireland, it definitely doesn't work, because immigration policy is decided either from Westminster or from Brussels, depending, and your local politicians have absolutely no say over it. Protests, we saw what happened in the UK and in Ireland, where people protested. I mean, they weren't taken that seriously, and everyone called them far right. At some point, people feel driven to this. Now, there's the other factor, of course, which is in Belfast. It's the summer. Celtic versus Rangers matches have stopped, and they like an excuse to riot. And I did see the footage. I said to my wife, I was watching the footage the other day, a couple of random cars were just on fire, and I was wondering whether some people had put in calls to friends of theirs to help them out with an insurance thing. But, like, I don't know what else people are supposed to do up there.
But, like, again, comes back, like, no one, increased the VAT on cigarettes. Someone got beheaded in the street.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course people are going to be upset and angry. And like you said, like, okay, you shouldn't be doing that. But if you feel, which a lot of people do, it's funny, because, like, my point is that on a TV show in the Republic of Ireland, they're talking about how it's the social media, whatever. But I actually think that the show itself, where they're all talking, is actually the embodiment itself of what's the problem. That if you feel, like you just said, that voting does nothing for you, that writing letters to your local politician does nothing for you, that your politicians just come in and do a kind of a hand wringing and are absolutely afraid of their life of saying anything that might get them called, something scary like far right or racist, so they don't say anything, then it just gets to the point that frustrations bubble over and bubble over and bubble over, and people just act out. I mean, it's older than time.
I was just thinking as I was listening to you talking there about that the people. The last time I was on Virgin Media, I was on with Adele McGinley from the Hope and Courage Collective, and I had a fairly robust exchange about how the Hope and Courage Collective represents nobody, has no members, is funded by the state, it represents the government, and is there to advance the government propaganda line. And there was an enormous reaction to the clip, and an enormously positive reaction to the clip. And I have not been invited back onto Virgin Media since then, over a year, and she's been on 6 times since. So, like, I'm not. It's not that I'm sitting here going to go, I want to be in Virgin Media. I don't care. I'd rather not drive up at night, if I'm completely honest. But I think it's very telling. Like, there's nothing. Even if you win an argument with these people, even if the viewers finally get to see somebody saying you don't represent anyone, they're still shunted on. Nobody elected Adele McGinley. She has no authority whatsoever deriving from the public, or any authority or any legitimacy. It all comes from the fact that the government forks over money to a 3-person organisation called the Hope and Courage Collective, which is comprised of extreme left-wing activists who got their start in left-wing politics and now pose as experts on the rest of us. It's disgraceful.
What are they supposed to actually do?
Well, they're the Hope and Courage Collective, Sarah. You and I should set one up and apply for state funding. We should call it the Nice People and Very Kind Things Group, and apply for state money. And we would just report on people who aren't very nice and don't do very nice things, like, I don't know, people before profit. Like, this is what they do.
But they never have. But they never have the same on the other hand. Well, no, we should set up our own called the Bored and Disillusioned Foundation. Like, where's the alternative? This is the thing. I actually don't have that much of a problem with groups that are representing some kind of view, provided that there's an alternative. There's no funding for silly little organizations on the other side. Where's the 3 people who are sitting around whose job it is to capture the disenfranchisement of working class people who feel like their housing resources and stocks are being limited by mass immigration? Where's the group for them?
Well, let's set it up. Sarah and I require a 3rd person. You can apply in the comments below, a 3rd person to join our little group. We will call it the Collective of Interesting People Who Are Very Concerned. And we'll apply to the Department of Justice for funding. We'll get about 1.5 million a year. We'll split it 3 ways. We'll write it off, obviously, some of the research funding and all the rest of it. But we'll split it 3 ways, and then we'll get on TV. Sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan, John.
Yeah. We'll decide what the application criteria are at a later date. Anyway, look, tell me about this thing in the Rotunda, because honestly, it's one of those stories. You know the way sometimes a story in the news, you're aware of it, you keep hearing people talking about it, but then you're just too lazy to read up on it. That was me for most of the week. It wasn't you, so fill me in.
So, well, I'll try and kind of explain it without showing my bias. Basically, the government is changing the model for how maternity healthcare is provided in Ireland, and no longer. Well, do you want?
Why is it changing the model?
To help to make it more accessible to people who aren't receiving private healthcare or private maternity care, I should say.
Okay.
So effectively, the way it is at the moment is the Rotunda, Holles Street are the 2 hospitals in Dublin, right? And they have let's just say, I don't know the numbers, but let's say they have 10 private, or had 10 private consultants each, and those consultants were both working on a private and a public model. So you, for example, might pay the money to go to a private consultant, and that would mean that you would get continuity of care. You would register with the consultant. You would see the same consultant for every scan, for your 20-week scan, for every interaction throughout your pregnancy, and that consultant would deliver your baby, whether it was by C-section or I was going to say the natural way. C-section's not unnatural, but you get my point. And you would get a private room. So the cost model of that is that your health insurance, if you have it, would pay a huge percentage of it, and that you would pay between 3.5 and 5 grand for your entire pregnancy, including your room at the end, for 3 nights if you have a baby the normal way, or 5 nights if you have a C-section. That was the model, that was the way, and lots of women had their babies that way. There is also another scheme on the public called the Domino scheme, which is a maternity midwife-led scheme. Lots of people availed of that. That's free. That doesn't have a consultant. It's midwife-led, but obviously if there's an emergency or whatever, a consultant comes in. But if you go to a public hospital and you just go through the public model, you would still have not as many, but you would have obviously the normal amount of appointments throughout your pregnancy. So you have a booking appointment at around, I believe, 12 weeks. And then you have appointments for your 20-week scan, which is your big scan. And you have appointments for whatever. the likelihood is that you probably wouldn't see the same consultant each time, because most of the private consultants would also do public shifts, and so you might see one guy one day, another guy another day, and then your baby might be delivered by whatever. Some people don't like that. That's fine. So that system is full of problems, long queues, long waits, and not delivering, pardon the pun, the best service. So the government have decided instead to stop consultants being able to stop allowing consultants to have private contracts within the state hospitals, because their argument is that they are availing of state resources, the hospital, but having private clients, if you know what I mean. So the issue with this now is that a lot of consultants are now unavailable. So I have somebody who I know who's currently pregnant who wants to avail of the private maternity care for reasons that are their own, and I'll get to that in a minute. And you can't get a private consultant anymore, because there's none left. They're leaving, or they're not available, or whatever. And ultimately what it boils down to is a couple of things. First of all, the government is not providing a good service at the public level. So instead of improving that service, they've decided to tinker with the private service, which is actually working quite well. And we can't make the shit part better, but we'll make the better part shit. And they are another thing that grinds my gears about it is that of all of the things in healthcare, of all of the things that could be messed with, could be improved, could be looked at, this is what the government have decided to focus on, like the way women choose. And I'm old enough to remember when choice was the center of the universe. Choose to have their babies. So instead, they're saying we're going to make it worse for everyone to have a baby for a while, and we hope that in a few years' time it'll get better for everyone. But we're taking away the option for it to be better if you want to pay the $5,000. And I know, John, that there are people who are going to say, well, isn't it well for people paying $5,000 and you shouldn't have, blah, blah. But that's your choice. And if you want to pay for a better, lots of people go to private consultants, for example, for reasons. There's complexities in their pregnancies. They've had losses before. Some consultants, nearly all consultants, have specialist areas. So be it scanning, be it twin pregnancies, be it whatever. And people go to them for those reasons. Some people go to private consultant because they just want their own room, because that's their prerogative. And people have private healthcare because they want to know if they have a surgery that they'll have their own room in a private hospital. That's their prerogative. And during the most vulnerable, most difficult, most life-changing event of your life, if you're a woman who wants her own room after it, that's your prerogative if you want to spend your own money on it. But the government have decided now to take that away from you, tinker with the maternity healthcare in Ireland, and hope for the best in the long term, that it'll turn out better for everyone. But in the meantime, let's just more performative nonsense that doesn't actually do anything. And my God, what a joke.
Do you know the way
I talked for about 15 minutes.
You did, but it was fascinating and very relevant. And you made a point which I think just can't be made often enough. You know the way if people Google me and they come across all the Phoenix articles about me, and and what my enemies say on social media, it's like, oh, he's failed at everything, he's never had any successes. I've had many successes. One of them was when, during the Fine Gael Labour government of 2011 to 2016, I was a consultant for the private schools in Dublin through the joint management body. I represented the private schools who were at that stage were under severe threat from the Fine Gael Labour government, who wished to basically remove all state funding from the likes of Blackrock College, St Michael's, Gonzaga, the usual, and indeed many outside of Dublin. And we won. The Labour government, the Labour Party, was frustrated in its aims due to basically a coordinated campaign of parent power. But one of the things I remember saying to people and kind of getting nods at the time was that if the government wanted to eliminate private schools in Ireland, wanted to just get rid of them overnight, there's a very easy thing to do it. There's a very easy way to do it, which is to invest enough money into the public school system so that every free school in Ireland is better than Blackrock College. It would take time, would take money, would take investment, but you could do it. Yeah. Blackrock College is a great school, not the be all and end all. If you simply made the public schools better than the private schools, people would no longer have a reason to spend money. Private education would be at an end. But they can't do that. And the instinct with equality on the left, and this is true of everything they touch, and it's why you should keep the government out of anything that you like, is that the equality is never achieved by bringing people at the bottom up. It is always achieved by cutting off the tall poppies, to use a phrase, and leveling everybody down. In this case, I have some sympathy, as it happens, Sarah, with the principled argument that, if the state is paying for the building, maybe the consultant shouldn't be using it for private. The consultant can pay rent.
But then change the model within the structure that's there. Don't just take it away. Well, there used to be a private maternity hospital in, what was it called? It closed down around 2014, I think. Anyway, it was up in Milltown.
I don't know. I have nothing to do
with it. It was a solely private maternity hospital in Dublin. The name has just gone out of my head or whatever. But there is nowhere else. And again, like, this was a system that was working well for people. Like, I should have said it. I don't care. I had my children privately. That's my business. The reasons why I did it are my own. And it's none of anybody else's business. And if that's the way I want to spend my money, that's the way I want to spend my money. But like, the idea that supposing I was having a fourth kid, that now with all the complexities of my pregnancies and the difficulties that I had with having my 3 children, that I would now have to go in and just like, I don't think that's right. If I want to pay for something, it's nobody else's business. And it's not on a model. It's not on a model of here's the plan to make it better. It's just, we're just going to make this, as you say, hope for the best, hope that it improves over time. Don't see any plan. And to your point, the same with private schools. It's not really that Labour thing about getting rid of. I didn't go to private school. I don't have any skin in the game on private schooling whatsoever. But at the same time, I always feel really suspicious that it's not actually private schools that Labour hate. It's the people who went to private schools. That's the difference.
Except for them themselves.
Well, yeah. Exactly. Well, there's this. I mean,
people in private schools who don't feel guilty about it and don't vote Labour, I think, is the
self-loathing is a huge part of it. But I just think watching Jennifer or Carol McNeil come out and defend removing choice from women in how and where and why and at what cost they have their babies in Ireland, while the Children's Hospital is still unopened. Do you not have other things to be worrying about? And why are you messing with something that's working for some people?
The funny thing about this is, of course, that this is a radically left-wing policy from a government that, like, if you ask the people who consider themselves on the left in Ireland, they would say that Jennifer Carol McNeil is borderline a Thatcherist. But this is. And by the way, it's not. You don't just have to. It's not just John McGurk saying this. I think Fionn Sheehan and the Independent was making the point during the week. This is an extraordinarily left-wing policy by the minister. It doesn't, and how you know it's left-wing is that it disapproves life for a whole bunch of women without making it any better for anyone else, but then calls the outcome like equality. But this is a government that is supposed to represent people with aspiration, people who want choice, people who work hard, maybe. And this is, I'm going to say something now that is completely beyond the pale. But just maybe that woman who went to college, did her master's, did her legal apprenticeship, I'm not talking about you, by the way, because you're a barrister, but like a woman out there, maybe she did an accounting apprenticeship, got a good job, earned some money, got into her 30s, decided to have her family. Maybe one of the reasons that she did all that work and advanced herself was so that at the most vulnerable time of her life, when she was having a baby, she could afford a little bit of extra comfort.
Yeah.
Maybe that's one of the reasons she did it. But no, not to be permitted.
But also featuring in those women, and I know they're not the majority, but is all kinds of women. I have somebody that I know very well who had a relative who had a serious brain injury in childbirth and was disabled and for life as a result, and who had this terror of childbirth herself then because this had happened to somebody in her family. Like, there's all kinds of women who have all kinds of situations. And if you want to spend $3,500 on getting a consultant and having your own baby, like, that's a matter for yourself.
Yeah.
It's just this kind of idea of like, and again, it's like so many things. It's easy for the government as well because they know that there's a huge amount of people out there who'll go, oh, well, too posh to push, leave, who cares? But it's not. It's about women's healthcare again, taking a cheap shot at something, picking on something that's working well to distract from the fact that you've got umpteen things that aren't working well and make you look like you're busy doing stuff, busy doing nothing except damaging something that was one of the only things, in my opinion, that was working well in health.
All right. Okay. Well, we leave that one there. Did you, we'll change topics a little bit. Just a reminder at this stage in the podcast, if you haven't done already, please hit the like button, please hit the subscribe button, please hit the share button. Do anything you can to help us out. And thank you very much for continuing to listen to this point in the podcast. Actually, the number of you who are listening the whole way through is frighteningly high, and means that we can't just kind of like take it easy in the second half. But I'm going to start by taking it easy in the second half by asking Sarah if she took the time this week, as all citizens are supposed to wish the Minister for Foreign Affairs a happy birthday.
Was that not just the wildest thing? So, for people who don't know, Simon Harris put up on Instagram a photo of himself sharing a cake with Helen McEntee because it was her birthday at her desk in the office. And I mean, I think people gave out to us before for talking about the Kardashians, but like, people are dying, Kim, was the meme that we discussed before. I don't care if it's Helen McEntee's birthday, do you? As I said to you on the phone, like, so I'm in court every day and that you're getting dates for hearings and different things, whatever. And my birthday's in July. And a few times in the last couple of weeks, I've gotten dates for the 8th of July, which is my birthday. I haven't been like, excuse me, everyone, just so you know, on the next day, I'd just like everybody to be aware that it's my birthday. Because I'm a 42-year-old adult. And who cares if it's your birthday after the age of about 11? Except your parents. But just wild.
Everybody knows now that on September, July the 8th, everyone should text
regret
Sarah
I
and wish
said
her
the
a
number.
happy birthday. Yes,
I know, it was a
and
terrible.
happy 43rd birthday. Your 43rd
Thanks,
birthday.
John. You're only 42. Anyway, yeah, I just think it's like unbelievably tone deaf, like to the point where sometimes I think these people are trolling us, and then other times I think, no, they're just that living in such a bubble that they think that anybody cares, with all due respect, that it's Helen's birthday. Weird.
There's a funny thing. I mean, it feels like Simon Harris has this one communication strategy that worked for him for a while in about 2017, 2018, where it was just kind of like, Simon Harris, I'm a fun guy. I remember your birthday. I remember your name. I remember that you've got a dog. I'm a really normal person. I like cake. I like jumpers. There's a reason for years I have called him, and I kind of feel bad. Like, he's Owen McLove from Father Ted. You know, you just kind of like, you expect him to like produce a cake jumper and, you know, say various other things. And this kind of, that it came in the week that it came was just extraordinary to me. And the other thing is, and this is the thing that you didn't say, but I will say, is like, would he have, say it was Charlie McConaughey's birthday, right? Do you think Simon Harris would be rocking in there to Charlie McConaughey with the cake? I don't think so.
No, probably not.
This might be something, you know, that, you know, where the little ladies are expected to like place more significant on their birthdays than the gruff middle-aged political men.
Well, I think in fairness to Charlie McConaughey, I don't think Charlie McConaughey cares if it's his birthday, and rightly so. And if he's in work, I doubt he goes around telling everyone or expects anybody to notice, because that would be the normal adult thing to do. But I take your point that it's definitely a kind of a feminine thing. And look, if he wants to say happy birthday to her and bring her in a cake because they're mates and they work together, like, that's grand. The issue arises that he thinks it's important enough to put it on social media. As if we're all supposed to go, oh my God, I didn't realize it was Helen's birthday. Oh, happy birthday, Helen. Like, that is supreme levels of madness to me.
Anyway, July the 8th, that makes you a Cancer, doesn't it?
Been called worse. Yeah.
Yes. No, well, I'm Pisces. We're both water signs, you see. It's fascinating.
I am going to go out on a limb and say that I think star signs are nonsense.
Oh, no, they're not. No. I'll talk to you about this offline, though, because I don't want the listeners.
No, they are nonsense. Nonsense. They are nonsense. They are a fun thing to talk about in a nonsense way. Like, I place as much weight on it as I would you and I having a conversation about reruns of the US Office. It is fun and silly. They are not real. You do not have characteristics because of the day you were born. What about a premature baby? Are they supposed to be their are they their star sign that they were originally supposed to have?
No.
Or are they the star sign of the day they were born?
On
And
the
what
day
if
they
they're
were
born?
born.
What if they're born by elective section? Does that mean that the surgeon who decided that because of his schedule, the Tuesday was the day, that their entire life is there informed by the day that he decided on his schedule?
No,
that
your
that's
life
how-
is not informed by these things at all. Not
or
at
your
all.
personality.
No, no, I'm not. I will lose the respect of a section of the audience. If I say I don't think it is
Respect of
totally
all of the audience, John. You're a middle-aged man. Get a grip of yourself.
Okay, well, let's continue talking about middle-aged men, because you had this column during the week that you wanted to well, not your column, you didn't write it, but there was a column in the Daily Mail that caught your eye. Apparently, we men are not great. So that's because we're not all sensitive souls like me who understand about star signs and stuff like that.
Well, thank you to the person on Twitter who drew my attention to this, and I won't name them because they don't have their name, so I don't actually know their name. But there was an article this week in the Irish Daily Mail which my attention was drawn to, and then I subsequently read, and I will read the headline now. It is by a woman called Lucy Cavendish, and
Great name.
Yes, and her headline is "Spongers, Cheats, and Commitment Phobes. Everything I've learned about men from dating." Spongers, cheats, and liars. Everything I've learned about men in a lifetime of dating. Spongers, cheats, and liars, John.
Where did the commitment phobes come from? Did you just invent that, or is that another charge?
That's in the byline. That's later.
Okay.
So the reason why I find it interesting is because I actually put it into ran an AI model, and so just asked it to do the reverse. So the reverse would be some of the words I'm not going to repeat, but the reverse would be gold diggers. And so even if it was, let's just keep it simple and say gold diggers, cheats, and liars, everything I've learned about women in a lifetime of dating, and then there was a man or whatever, there would be consternation. And I don't mind saying, absolutely, there would be certain feminists in Ireland who would need to be ice packing their geese with the horror of the whole thing. Absolutely fuming, and we would have bingo for a week.
Did you just say what I think you just said?
I did. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to be in trouble on that one. Sorry. We would be able to play bingo for the week without the Andrew Tate bing, the manosphere bing, toxic masculinity bing, misogyny, cultural misogyny bing, the Irish mammies to blame bing. We'd have a week of it, and how it was men were just awful and terrible, and this was more of it and whatever. And where I think the culture has gone wrong in many ways, but where in particular the culture has gone wrong on this subject is that a woman like that, with all due respect to her, can summon up all of the audacity in her body and write that about men. What you've learned in a lifetime of dating men is that they're spongers, cheats, and liars. Are you out of your mind to say that?
Do you not think
out of your mind? Like, I just think that is, it would never happen in the reverse, John. It is simply not true. Hun, maybe the problem is you, if that's the kind of man you've been attracted. Is there bad people out there? Absolutely. Men and women. And dating, I'm not dating myself, TG, but lots of my friends are, and it's no picnic for either gender. But to have that and to write that and to think that that is an acceptable thing, when the reverse would be so meltdown city would happen if it was the reverse. And no, but it's okay. Men are all horrible. The manosphere, Andrew Tate, bing, 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 bing. You're all horrible, awful, terrible men. Only dying to just, abuse women, just be toxic and horrible, and it's your mommy's fault for looking after you too well, and blah, 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 blah.
Do you not think it's funny that the people who write and talk most about dating and relationships in the media are definitionally the people who are worst at it? Like, I mean that, like, nobody really wants to read the relationship column from kind of like, I'm Jill, I've been happily married for 60 years. Here's my secrets and here's my advice. No one wants to read that. People want to hear from the people who are messy, It's like, I'm on my
John, nobody also wants to publish the article by the man who's 60 who has some not positive things to say about the women that he's been dating. Imagine. Just try and imagine it. If he was like, I'm 60 and I'm wealthy and they're all gold diggers and they're all cheats and liars and they're all this, it just wouldn't happen.
Is it not, the other thing here is, of course, that, and by the way, there's definitely a guy out there who has had that experience, and there's a guy out there. There's a guy. Sorry.
Of course, there is.
No, but
I have friends who are single in their 40s who are dating women, and they have colourful stories, as do the women. But it goes both ways.
yes, well, women are not always trustworthy. As I, for one, have learned.
It's not. I think that the bad behaviour can be in more higher in certain domains in the genders. Like there's definitely differences. There's definitely, shallowness is more prevalent in men, let's just say, ish, except for when it comes to height. Women are pretty shallow about height. Like there is like differences. But there's poor behaviour on both sides. The point is that the culture allows constant man bashing of men all the time, and it's socially acceptable to just down on men and boys all the time. This is another article that's an example of that in a way that would never ever be tolerated the other way around.
Well, there's a couple of factors. There's a couple of things I wanted to say. The first thing I would say, of course, is that one of the big problems with all of this is that if you are in the guy who's had the experience, that you're just attracting the gold diggers and the bimbos and whatever other negative word you want to use. It may be that like that's what you're attracted to. That might be the problem, and that might be the same in the reverse as well. That if you're a woman, perhaps subconsciously that's the kind of nonsense you're attracted to. But the other thing, just in terms of the man bashing, one of the things that somebody said to me a couple of years ago, which has rung true and changed my understanding of the world, which is that the media is basically written by and for 45-year-old divorced women. That and the divorce bit is a generalization, but like news is one of those industries that in about the early 1990s women started moving into. Female journalists now in many places outnumber the men. The people who are in managerial tend to be kind of like, at that point in their lives where maybe if they've reached managerial level in a major news outlet, disproportionately those are the people who maybe she earns more than he does. Maybe that causes the marriage to break up. There's a disproportionate number of divorced middle-aged women working in the American media, for example. And this engenders a certain degree of bitterness. It engenders a certain degree of liberal politics, and it influences a lot. There are people who will passionately dispute that theory. It makes a lot of sense to me looking at the world. That's all I'll say.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that might be the case. Whatever the cause is, the result is that we have articles like this, and there's loads. We've talked about this umpteen times. Part of the common threads on my side of this podcast has always been that I find the man bashing really, really distasteful and boring and tired and not very smart and not very thought out and whiny, and I don't relate to it at all. Does that mean I haven't met guys who I don't think are nice or think are? Of course not. But there's just a thread which is, always there, which is that men, particularly white middle-aged men, are kind of just, somebody was saying to me recently about a work event where some external was it you or some external HR company came in and said, the woman giving a talk said, I see a lot of pale and stale in the room. And it's like, these are men who've worked their whole lives. So a man in his 50s is kind of done, like, and you feel confident enough to say that to a room full of people without any expectation that there'll be any recourse for it. Yeah. Whereas a man might come in and say, the girls are looking well or something, and he probably lose his job. It's just the double standard, and it's a discrimination against men. Sorry, like if you said that, you'd get into trouble. But I can say it because I'm not a man.
I have no problem saying it. The other thing I think one of my guilty pleasures, apart from the horoscopes and Barbara Streisand, is that I will occasionally, if I've got 10
talk, it's just. It's getting a bit weird. You're getting weirder.
One of my guilty pleasures is Mumsnet, you know, and the relationship section on Mumsnet in particular, which is like it just, if you ever want to read other people's problems, and by the way, some women really do suffer with absolute jackasses, but every now and again, in fact, when I say every now and again, I mean like twice a day, 3 times a day, somebody will post in there some minor complaint about their husband. You know, he didn't put his cup in the sink. He persistently kind of like leaves his socks on the floor. And there will be some voices of reason, but there will be this armada of angry women going, leave the bastard, you deserve better. You should divorce him for this. And no matter what he's done, whether he has cheated on her with her sister at their mother's funeral, or whether he's left his sock on the floor, it's always a really bunch of angry anti-men voices kind of going, leave him, you're better. And this preponderance of kind of like, and it comes from, I surmise from reading those comments and from following a lot of this stuff, and indeed in the case of Miss Cavendish, who has, I understand it, 4 children and is a single mother, a lot of them are taking out their own anger on all men. That's what's happening here, in a way that, by and large, the male commentariat, and you know, as men, we've all had bad experiences, or we've all had kind of experiences we'd rather not relive. You don't tend to take the anger out on all of women in a way that women tend to feel entitled to take it out on all of mankind.
Yeah, and I think that I was given advice many years ago by somebody quite close to me about not discussing your marriage in detail with groups of women all the time, because it's not useful. And, you know, obviously you can meet up with your girlfriends and have a bit of a vent from time to time. I'm not talking about that, but that a lot of time, you know, there is evidence to demonstrate that if you're in friend groups and one couple gets a divorce, the chances of the other couples getting a divorce rises and rises and rises with the amount of single women, divorced women who are in the group. And I think that would be what you're talking about, which is that all of a sudden you say, well, he leaves the toilet seat up or he does this. And it's not just an irritating thing that your husband is doing. It's now suddenly a demonstration of a chronic disrespect that is undermining you, and thinks that you're a slave, and thinks that you're this, and thinks that you're that. And that rot starts to set in, and it's just not useful, and it's not good for your marriage, and that you should, you know, avoid it if you can. It's sometimes is about disrespect. I'm not saying that things that people do in their marriage aren't sometimes about disrespect, but sometimes there's also a mentality to see every trivial thing that a man does as a referendum on your entire relationship, and an underlying disrespect that's not always there. With all due respect to men, which I think I've earned the right to say, and people will believe me, sometimes men are just a little bit oblivious.
Well, I'm not. I am, as my wife would attest if she ever came on this podcast, in many ways the perfect husband. I don't really do anything wrong, and you know, I'm glad none of those columns are ever written about me. That's all I'm going to say.
I think you have your own site.
All right. Okay. We'll leave it there.
You don't need to know about what your wife is thinking about you, John, because you just have to look up her horoscope, and that will tell you what she's going to feel like next.
That is indeed. But that's what happens. She too is a cancer. She too is a cancer, like you. Explains why I get on so well with both of you. Anyway,
you used to be cool. Like, you used to watch American football.
I still do. Yeah.
Whatever. Now it's Mumsnet and horoscopes. What next on knitting?
It's my midlife crisis, Sarah. What can I say? All right. Look, we will leave it there. Thank you very much for listening to us, and for liking and subscribing and staying with us as this podcast continues to grow. Oh, I nearly forgot to say that Sarah and I obviously are going to be speaking at the Percy French Festival in July on the same day, which is on Friday let's look this up here. Let's look it up. Why can't I do the calendar thing? Is it Friday the 24th of July?
No, 17th. It's the
Friday the
17th.
17th of July at the Percy French Festival over in Roscommon. Tickets for that are on sale now. If you want to come and meet us in person, and I hope that many of you do. Otherwise, hopefully we'll have a chance to do a couple of events later on this year where we will get the chance to meet many of you in person. So we look forward to that. But until next week, that's that. I have been John. She has been Sarah. This has been Something Different. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.